All right, Charles, I'm ready if you are. I'll go ahead and do the introductions here. Welcome everybody to our May Tech Tips Live, our end of our Python series. And here we're doing, which I've been told is highly anticipated, the accessing external systems through Python. And of course, this is with inspections. So I am your host, Jen Micklick. I am one of the technical project managers here at Hertzler. I believe Jenny Lee is going to be doing our Tech Tips Live next month, so you'll get to see her. Please sign up if you haven't. Our technical resource for this month, as well as last month, is Charles Min, our data scientist. Hi, Charles. So what I want to do is go ahead and review a little bit from last month, kind of have a little bit quick introduction, and then let Charles get on his way. So Charles, oh, perfect. You're so good. So last month in review, Charles reviewed Python with individual tests. So the couple examples that he showed was validating a proper format with traceability field. And this was like a best by or best born on date, making sure things were in the proper format. We've had numerous discussions with clients about how to validate, does your traceability need to be exactly 7 characters, or it needs to be 3 alpha and 4 digits, things like that. So if you missed that, please go to our website under our customer resources in the Tech Tips Live, and you will see the video from last month. The other thing that Charles showed us how to do was performing calculations in a numeric input field from being able to gather from additional resources. And let's see, I think from the month before, Byron was showing us how to repeat a sub-inspection on submit. So again, down below, it's www.hertzler.com and the Tech Tips Live webinar. You can find our future ones, register for them, as well as see the ones that you may have missed. Okay, so our introduction this week is the focus to connect to other applications. And I'm going to let Charles talk about this, but I wanted to kind of put some thoughts in your mind about how we can connect to other enterprise systems and pros and cons and things that we have faced in our experiences. So most common databases, your ERPs, CRMs, billing, things of that nature, usually have a database behind them. A lot of enterprises, and I won't name any in particular, are very stringent on their database security. And we understand that. We have ways to work around that makes everybody happy, whether if we can't get direct access just to read certain tables from a database, we can actually create views or have the IT people create views in our own database of the needed fields. This definitely gets around it. If that's not able to be done, a lot of these systems allow you to do Excel exports on a nightly basis. We can even take those in and put them into our system. So there's a lot of different ways instead of just directly pushing and pulling the information. So if you have something on your mind, please go ahead and let us know and we'll figure out something. ERP, for example, putting in a lot number. If we can access that database, it gives us the ability to bring in a lot of the information, like what's the last time on this lot number, what was the machine, what was the standard shift, things like that. We can pull that in and save some time and make it a little more efficient for your operator. The other things we can do, pulling from an OPC server. So we have a lot of people talk about, oh, we have PLCs. Why we might not be able to connect to them directly if you have an OPC server software such as Kepware. We can definitely get those tags and pull the information as well. And then again, Excel files, text files, CSV files. But in our case today, we're gonna pretend like we're connecting to an ERP server.
Is that my cue?
Yeah, if you want to go to that next one.
Sure.
Yeah. Take it away, Charles.
All right. So the focus today is all about accessing external systems. What are the steps you need to do in order to connect to an external system? Well, for the purposes of our demonstration today, we're going to just focus on an ERP system. Many of you have an internal ERP system that you have job numbers and batch numbers that, all of your scheduling information. We can take that information, pull it down into GainSeeker and automatically save all that traceability just so you have, makes that, inputting that information that much more streamlined. So for starters, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll show this information in a moment. You want to make sure that when you set this up, you've got the information to that ERP system, to that database. You've got access, not just you as the administrator, but you also have the ability to make sure that, or you also need to make sure that everyone that's using GainSeeker also has access to that ERP system. It's not going to, it's not going to work out as well. Now, you may, as part of the setup, you may have, instead of providing individual users with access, you may use a single login. That makes it a lot, again, that streamlines the secure things. Granted, in this day and age of security, that may or may not be the best way to move forward with it. But that's up to you and your IT team to discuss how they want to do that. Within the Python script, how do we connect to that information? How do we query the right information? Most of the time, we're going to be, my assumption is that we're working with a Microsoft SQL database. If it's a different database format, such as MySQL or Oracle, the format of those queries are going to be slightly different, but the results are still going to be the same. We just need to know, structuring those select statements to get the right information is really highly dependent on the table database and database engine, as well as the table setup itself. So after that, how do we set those connections up? How do we get those queries? And then what do we do with them afterwards? So for starters, you'll see that I've got my database connections window. I've already set up my GainSeeker ERP as a connection, so that way I can query it right off the bat. Let me switch to my screen. So now that you can see my Python script, I'll zoom in so that way you guys can all see a little bit better. This will allow you'll see here that the first, my first two main lines here are my SQL commands: load, save, connection, and then connect. If you do not connect, you're not going to be able to access your external database. Now, this GainSeeker ERP database or connection that I've set up is really the same as my existing one. I've set up a couple of tables that have some job information. There's an ID number, there's a part family, there's the lot number, which is the ID that we're going to query on, and then the important traceability fields that I want to save as part of my inspection. So with an ERP system, what can you do? Well, we've got really two methods. You can either have the operator enter in that unique ID, that batch number, job number, whatever the value is that you're going to query the database against. After that, if you're using the unique ID that the operator enters, you can use a prescript to query against it based on that ID, or if the operator enters it into a trace field, use an on-change script. or you can use a query to get all of your active batch numbers and then display that list to the operator. And you'll see here right now, what I have is that I've actually got it set up as an on-chain script right now. So if I go ahead and run my script, I've got a couple of, I've got my operator, and now I forgot my right one. Nope. And I've got an error message that has it set up. So give me 1 second, so that way I have this. There we go. So if I put this number in, now you see it loads all of my correct department, my machine, my cavity, and I'm also showing what part family I'm using for that. Now, when I submit, I'm using that part family to go ahead and collect all of the necessary standards, so that way they're now being set to the respective numeric inputs. And so I can go ahead and put in the values as needed. Very straightforward. As a point, the counterpoint, I change this to the pre and run. Now I've got a list of all of my active lot numbers that I can use. And I can choose a different one, click OK. And you can see it now pre-fills all of that information and does the exact same thing. So we've got a couple of different ways. Now that list that I displayed, I have it set up such that I'm displaying specifically the lot number as well as the part family that that lot number is associated with. What's being displayed is really kind of up to you. I'm only displaying that because that's that's the simplest set of information that I would want to show to the operator. I could easily show more information, such as what machine I expect to be on, that I should be on, because if you've got different stations that are associated with different machines on the shop floor, you're going to use the operator is going to use the station that's closest to the machine that they collected the samples off of. So they're going to, that might make it a little bit easier to know where you are or which one you want to choose. And then, of course, I can go ahead and enter in my data and submit. One thing to note, just kind of as an aside, given that I've got several different part families, and in our tour database, those part families have different numbers of characteristics associated with them. So I arbitrarily decided I'm going to fill up to 10 numeric inputs and then assign those values. So that's where I'm doing all that from. Going back to our script, show you in a little bit more detail. I've set this up into functions to make my life a little bit easier. So down here, depending on whether I've set my script to query the database, query my ERP, it's either going to be a pre-script or as an on-change, it's going to do this, get all my information. My pre-script is what is collecting all of those values from the database and saying, all right, here's my active, my set of active databases or active lot numbers in the database. And then I'm displaying that information to the operator. As you can see here, I'm only displaying UDL1 and then part number to the as the job results to the operator. I could have a little bit more information. Like I said, I could display machine as well if I wanted to. Same thing. But then I display them all using our display tools. So that way I show it to the operator. and then verify what that lot number is, and then pass it on to fill out all of the respective lot number, department, machine, cavity, and part family traceability values, or traceability tests, excuse me. You'll notice that I also disable those tests from being interacted with. The assumption here is that what's in the ERP is correct. We're validating that. So that way we can certainly say, all right, we've gotten that information, it's correct. We're going to make sure we're not going to let you, the operator, mess with that because it's correct. We don't want, for consistency's sake, for we want those values to be entered in the same way every single time. I do ensure that if in the case where you saw I entered in a lot number that didn't exist in my table, it gives me an error message that says, hey, wrong, I've entered in an invalid lot number, so go ahead and enter in a new one. In the case that, I always do this, and I make sure that in the case that something goes wrong, I also have a trap that says, well, what if that system is down, or what if the database that we're getting the jobs from doesn't have anything valid? Well, in that case, well, we want to make sure that I don't allow the operator to continue, because there's really no point in doing so at that time. So I go ahead and make sure that they know, contacted an administrator, something that way they need to do something in order to continue on. As part of my standards in the numeric, now I'm using the same script for both my traceability sub-inspection and my numeric input sub-inspection. So you'll see here that I'm getting my lot number that I've saved, getting the part family again one more time, and then the list of results, list of standards, and going through those 10 variables and assigning them based on what's returned. So those of you who've worked with our project managers recently, you've may heard us talk about dynamic inspections, where we take the SKU or whatever the defining part number that you're working with, and dynamically assign all of the associated characteristics to the right numeric inputs onto a single sub inspection. Makes things a lot easier, in my opinion. But yeah, here's how we can access our ERP real simply. As I mentioned, really knowing how the ERP is set up, whether that is a direct table in that ERP or a view of the ERP that is provided to us. In my opinion, having a view to work with, we know exactly how that table is set up. We can define those columns, set it up in any way, shape, or form, and it makes it a little bit easier to have that, what's the word I'm looking for? That correlation between what's in the data, what's in the ERP versus what we're looking for. I've seen ERP systems where the column names are not very, they're not very descriptive. Once you know how that's a little bit, how that is laid out, sure, that but for us where we're not working with that database on a regular basis, it can definitely be a little bit confusing. So with that, if there are any questions, please post them in chat. Anything if there's in more detail. One thing, go ahead, Jen.
Oh, I was going to say, and then go ahead and finish your thought. I think it might be good to kind of just go and show in GainSeeker maybe the Python appendix, kind of show like that SQL statement, and just to reemphasize that we do have a great help file in here that kind of helps you going along that Python.
Oh yeah, let me pull that up for you here. Now, I certainly prefer going and using our web-based version as opposed to using the GainSeeker help file. They're both equally, they're the exact same item. But if you go to now, the nice thing also is that it, in my opinion, when you're online, you can see everything and get through things a little bit more easily. But here in the appendix under Python scripting and commands, all of our SQL commands are there for you to look with. Here's the syntax and an example. One thing that is, I think, is mentioned somewhere, but if you do not use this identifier, then it uses your default GainSeeker connection. So that way you also don't have to you don't have to explicitly connect to it. Yeah, because by using that identifier, that does mean it's a temporary connection. So you can see here, we also have a bunch of other ways to set up the connection. We have a few commands that we use. You'll notice that there are times where I switch between get table and get column. Get table versus get column really just depends on what I'm looking for. If I get table with a single, sometimes this will just be, it gives me another list deep. Sometimes I don't need that extra depth. A couple of questions, going back to security, just real quick, security really depends on what your company wants. Some companies are very, very stringent on giving individual users access to the things that they need, and others are very, very open with giving a more generalized access to a database. The one thing that I strongly advise against, if you are using a SQL Server authentication method, I recommend against using the SA user, super admin user, because that's far more capabilities than are really needed for this.
Charles, I got a quick question here.
Yeah.
Not that it's difficult, but I think it would be good for everyone to hear. Is it possible to connect to two different systems in the same inspection? And with that, I'm guessing database, but really, it shouldn't matter what it is.
It really does not matter at all. Those of you who have exposure to templates, the QConnect command allowed you to have up to 10 separate connections at a time in your template. The SQL command, really, I don't believe there is a, I don't believe there is a limit to that. So you could have 0 through 99, 256, however many separate databases or connections you may need. That being said, for each one, you do need to define either the saved the saved connection name, which would be under your database connections, or the connection string, whether encrypted or not, before connecting to them. But yes, you can certainly have multiple temporary connections. You can have different systems. You may have an ERP system where all of your production data and batching data is in one protected database. You may have all of your materials in another database, and they're completely separate, and they need separate accounts to log into or separate permissions. Yeah, you definitely can do that.
Did we lose Jen there?
No, she's still there.
Oh, I was talking away. You guys just didn't hear me.
You're muted.
I am sorry. I should have put myself back on camera. You would know.
There you go. All right, I'll stop sharing then.
Yeah, if you want to hit one of the next slide there. I just wanted to remind everybody, if you start thinking of something, you know, obviously whether you want to do it yourselves or have us do it, feel free to call somebody in sales or call support. We're here to help you along your journey. So wherever you are, we can give you pointers. We can tell you what it would be for us to fix it, or we can, you know, say here's some suggestions for you. So definitely appreciate you staying with us and taking the time to join our Tech Tips Live. Our next one, exciting, is June 16th. It is no longer Pythons. So some of you will be disappointed and some of you will be like, yes. So hopefully we have a nice mix. It will be on GainSeeker side panel uses. So, you know, on the inspections, that side panel, the charts, what else can you put up there? What can we use it for? What have you seen? What have we seen it used for? So that'll be an exciting topic that Jenny Lee will be hosting with another resource. Give us about a week. This has been recorded, so we'll post it up on our website if you need to see it again, or our past ones as always. And we always appreciate your feedback. Good, bad, indifference, suggestions for future Tech Tips Live. And you can always send that to any one of us. So with that being said, Charles, couple minutes, and anything you want to say before we leave?
You know, I think the fact that we can leverage all of these outside systems is what really gives GainSeeker as much power as it does. Yes, it does take that. We do need to take that work to set it all up. But I do hope that once you guys do set it up, it makes it that much easier, much more streamlined for your operators to quickly and efficiently enter in the data that they need to.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. And again, I think our very first series of the Python, if you're not sure what he was meaning by on change and prescript, how that loads, go check out the very first Tech Tips Live in this Python series. It's got a great explanation on that. Just want to throw that out there. So with that being said, thank you everybody for joining this month, and we'll see you next month. Don't forget to sign up. Thank you.